Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and today I'm picking favorites. This is going to be my top 10 favorite books that I read in 2014. I don't have a lot of ground rules for picking my favorites. I'm horrible at picking favorites, but for this list I only let myself pick one book from a series, otherwise there would be a whole lot of Flavia de Luce and a whole lot of Orkowskian Saga books on this list. That would have defeated the purpose of having a top 10 list. I could not possibly begin to rank these books, so instead I have ordered them alphabetically by title, which means we're going to start with A. Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. A lot has been said about this book on BookTube recently, so I'm not going to rehash it very much, but it sucked me in, and honestly, if I had to pick my favorite book of the entire year, it would probably be this one, because not only did I think it was written very well, the characters were great, the world building was great, but just it all combined to be more than the sum of its parts. I'm not a rereader, and so I think it is really high praise for me to say that when I get done reading a book, my first instinct is to read it again. It was the first book I've had that feeling for in a very, very long time. Book number 2 is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. It's the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy. I thought Annihilation was the best book. It was short, sweet, really different. I went into reading Annihilation thinking that I was going to be creeped out and I wasn't going to finish the book, like it would give me the willies at night. And that didn't happen. I was able to enjoy the story despite some of the more bits, because the voice of the main character was kind of like this buffer between me and the subject matter, which I realize in the story, you know, her logic and her coldness is also a buffer between her and the weirdness going on around her, and it just worked so well for me. And part of the reason I like this book so much is that I was just so surprised that I could like a book in that kind of weird genre. Number 3 on my list is a classic, and it is Jane Eyre. It was a toss-up between this book and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, because for the record, I did not like Wuthering Heights. Jane Eyre is fantastic. This book is marvelous. It's actually a reread for me. I read in air quotes, this book, and I had always had this sense of guilt about reading Jane Eyre, because there's this point in the book where Jane leaves Thornfield Hall and she goes out into the moor and she's like starving and cold and begging for food, and my younger self found that portion to be too harrowing. I skipped like 30 pages, and I'm the kind of reader that doesn't consider a book read unless you've read every single page. So I've always felt kind of guilty that I said I'd read Jane Eyre even though I hadn't read all of it. It was time to fix that problem. It was so beautifully paced, and I got done with it and just realized that the part of why the story was so enjoyable was because there was just the right amount of time spent on each thing. Jane is a wonderful character, and it has so many elements to it that just resonated with me. I think that there is a little bit of Jane in me. Number 4 is Culpa Imperial by Angelica Gordischer, translated by the one and only Ursula K. Le Guin. Angelica Gordischer is an Argentinian writer of fantasy. It's basically a collection of short stories, but all the stories, they're all intertwined. They are all snapshots of times and places and people from, you know, the Culpa Imperial, this empire that never was. This is the subtitle is The Greatest Empire That Never Was. I haven't read a lot of translated works, but after reading this, I realized I really should, because you get this different flavor of fantasy. It shows up in the way that the place names are different, the character names are different, the way that people act is different, and yeah. And the writing is so beautiful. It's told from the storyteller perspective, like, here, let me tell you a story about. It worked so well. I stretched it out for quite some time because I would like read one story per day. I didn't want the writing to end, so I would highly recommend this if you were looking for a translated work and you like reading fantasy. This is just unusual and good. Number 5 is The Quantum Thief by Hahn hard quantum science fiction. This, The Quantum Thief is a stand-in for the entire series. I haven't read the 3rd book yet, but I have no doubts it's going to be fantastic. It's science fiction that he never stops to explain anything. You have to figure out everything from context, so it's challenging and hard and rewarding. And absolutely this one is on my list because it's one of those books that I got done reading it and I said, I need to reread this immediately. It's going to be an entire series of books, honestly, that are going to withstand rereading very well, and yes, I'm going to reread them someday. Number 6 is, yes, Ted Chiang, Stories of Your Life and Others. This is the one and only collection of Ted Chiang's short fiction. I think I've already mentioned how much I love Ted Chiang. I love all of his stuff, and this particular book is I'm always going to remember it because I was a complete mess. The inside of my head was a very unhappy place to be. I was so stressed out and anxious. I was worrying about everything, and despite that, this book was so good that it punched through all of my anxiety and my worries, and I couldn't help but be engrossed in every story, and I wanted to talk about every single story. It was an excellent book at just the right time that did a really good thing for me when I needed it. I don't know how to really express that. I think a lot of people probably have books that are really important to them because of the time in your life that you read them, or just a particular thing that coincidentally happened at the same time that you were reading the book. I really like his particular brand of science fiction. He writes a kind of science fiction that I don't think you see a lot. It's very much rooted in what's going on today, just in taking a piece of technology or a breakthrough today and then extrapolating it and growing it 50 or 100 years in the future and then saying, what if? Which I think is a fascinating way of doing science fiction. Number 7 is A Stranger in Alondria by Sofia Samatar. Once again, beautiful, beautiful writing. I stretched the book out rather than rushing through it because I never wanted the writing to end. It was really lyrical, and I liked the aspects of a constructed language in it, the poems and songs in it, the books within the books type thing. This is a fantasy book for people who love books and love the contents of books and how books can change you as a person. That's very integral to the story here. There is a page in here near the end where, Samatar is writing through the voice of the main character, Jevik, about finishing a book. It made me cry. It just hit me right in the feels because it was so true. I need to find that page and type it out and put it on my blog or something. It made me cry, and I wanted to tell everyone in the world who loves books to go read that page because it's so true. Number 8 is The Vor Game by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is a Vorkosigan Saga book, and it's a stand-in for all of the Vorkosigan books that I read this year. I think that The Vor Game was just perfect. Miles, Dendari, mercenaries, bluffing his way through everything, it was perfect! Number 9 is The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag by Alan Bradley. I have already mentioned this, as well as the Flavia de Luce mystery series in general, multiple times. Talked to people about them in comments as well. I love the series. This is a stand-in for the entire series. I read the first, 7 books in 2014. And I am picking the second book in the series because, while I liked the first book a lot, the second book, in my opinion, is where everything gelled. It's where everything just got so good for me. What I really appreciate about the series, not so much the mysteries and solving the murders and everything, not even the chemistry aspect, but just the relationship that Flavia, this 11-year-old girl, has with the adults in her life is very, very appealing to me. Her relationship with her father, which is very stiff upper lip, British type thing. Her relationship with Dogger, who's her father's manservant, who's an ex-POW from World War II, and who has PTSD, and her ability to deal with Dogger when he's having his attacks. It's very much me cheering inside, saying, yes, Flavia, this is how you are friends with someone who has problems. You accept them as they are, but you give them the help that they need in the form that they need. Number 10 is What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions by Randall Munroe. He is the guy who does the XKCD webcomic, which for geeky people is crack. This is, it's like reading Mythbusters. If you watch the Mythbusters television show, where basically they test things scientifically, and then if they can't get the results, they take it to absurd lengths and usually end up blowing up things. Except in this case, it's all thought experiments, and I think like half of these thought experiments end up with the Earth being destroyed. It is hilarious. I was laughing so much while reading this book. It's also kind of nonfiction, I guess. It is, I mean, Munroe takes his science and his math seriously, so while he's talking about very absurd things, he has actually put thought into them and researched them and done the math. So the numbers check out, just with really ludicrous, funny results sometimes. So it's just very entertaining. That was a lot of talking. I tried to do that fast, and now I gotta catch my breath. Those were my favorite... Whoa, don't knock the lights off, Rachel. Those are my favorite, top 10 favorite books of 2014. If you have read any of these books and want to talk about them, I could talk forever about some of these books, so comment down below, we could have a conversation. Let me know as well what your favorite books of 2014 were, or if you made a video, let me know. And until next time, bye.